often the best chancellors are unpopular, because to be chancellor, you do have to take tough decisions in the broader interests of the economy.
I have to say, if I were a politician, it would be the one job I would refuse. I mean, it is a thankless task, one has to say, whatever party you're with. Look, we must talk about the COVID-19 inquiry. It's going to publish its findings today into all the decisions that were made by Boris Johnson and your lot. Let's have a look. It's going to look in detail at the political choices, including how lockdowns were introduced, why they were introduced, the closure of businesses, the closure of schools, and all the social restrictions that we all had to live with. Looking back, what would you do differently if you had that time over again?
Well, it's very difficult because at the time, all the decisions were being made with partial information. So we didn't know the origin of the virus. We didn't know precisely what impact it was going to have. We didn't know that a vaccine would come when it did.
True.
But I think that probably, if I look back, the one thing which I feel the most troubled about was the closure of schools.
Did we panic?
I think we can argue that actually we were complacent and then we panicked.
Right.
So I think that there was with some honourable exceptions, we were too slow to act initially. And then I think while the lockdown was right, I think that there was an element of remorse on the part of policymakers thinking, because we didn't anticipate what was required early enough, then we can't take risks in the future.
Do you think at the end of the day that all of those restrictions taken as a whole actually made the slightest difference in the spread of the disease?
I think they did, because the disease spread through social mixing. But there's a big question as to whether or not we actually needed to criminalise some activities, because there were other countries which made it clear that you should not mix socially, but didn't use the criminal law. People followed the advice of government, and as a result, the spread of the virus diminished. At the time, I remember appearing on this programme and our mutual friend Piers Morgan saying to me, come on, does the government say yes or no to this type of activity? And it wasn't just because of Piers, powerful though he is, that we decided the criminal law was the right thing to do. We just thought that was a clear, bright line. But I think there is a very fair argument to say that the British people are sensible enough, if they're given clear advice, to follow it without the sanction of criminal.
It was a shame, though, that Number 10 didn't observe that. And that's part of the problem. If you look at the COVID-19 Bream Families for Justice UK group, who's one of the sort of pressure groups that really wants to hear about this decision that's been released today. And they're saying, you know, more than 230,000 of their loved ones were killed because of failures by those in power. That's the way they see it. They've waited 5 years for accountability. They do not want to find it's a whitewash. They want to hear, it's already exposed, the inquiry, misconduct. But they say, you know, we need to know specifically on the leadership. We want to not just hear about ineptitude, but actually have some kind of clarity on what exactly went wrong. Are they going to get that, do you think?
I hope they will, because Heather Hallett, who is the chair of the COVID inquiry, strikes me as someone who is determined to get at the truth. I've appeared in front of the inquiry. She makes it clear that witnesses have to subject themselves to very close interrogation. The concern that I have from the point of view of the victims' organisation is that there's very little that an inquiry can say that can assuage their grief. So, again, I think we'll all have to form a judgment later today on whether or not the inquiry has got exactly at the truth. But the point I made earlier, I think, is a difficult one sometimes to either get across or to accept, which is that when you're dealing with a crisis, mistakes will be made, but they'll be made often, in fact, always, in good faith. And the key thing is, can we learn from those? I'm talking about the policy mistakes. Jonathan might well make a point about the personal conduct of some individuals.
No, I'm not, because that's too much of a sort of open goal. And I want, as the Shadow Health Secretary at the time, I think there are 3 fundamental policy mistakes that were made throughout the period. And we came out of the pandemic saying, never again, we need to fix this, and we still haven't fixed them.
What were the 3 mistakes?
The 3 things were schools. I definitely agree with schools, and the best part of 2 years worth of education was missed by our young people.
So what would you have done? Just kept them as normal?
I think we should have kept schools open longer, as much as we could, not close them, basically, yes. The second thing is, we were in a situation where very, very low people in insecure work were forced to go to work because they were not given adequate recompense if ill. So we should have a proper provision of sick pay and support for people.
And
who
that
didn't
could,
feel
that
they
could
had to
be
go for-
counted for a lot of
Yeah, they were spreading the
illnesses.
virus.
Yeah.
Like the old, it's an old, it sounds slightly offensive now, but in public health terms, people refer to typhoid Mary, of how typhoid was spread, back in the day. And the third thing is, we all said we've got to fix social care. We left care homes exposed. Care homes were never given the protective ring that Matt Hancock promised to offer them. You're very annoyed with me for saying that, but I'm afraid that is the truth. And we all came out of the pandemic saying we've got to fix social care, and politicians of both parties keep kicking it into the long grass.
And the Labour government is actually having no solutions offered now.
Well, again, we're setting up an inquiry and saying, let's see what the inquiry reports. When we could see in the pandemic that the fact that we've not had an adequate social care system in this country was so brutally exposed, and so many of our elderly relatives lost their lives as a consequence.
I think we also, it's easy to forget how the politics of the personal entered the frame here. I mean, Boris Johnson nearly died of COVID. That must have had an impact into the way the government thought about it. I mean, you wouldn't be human if you weren't affected by something like that.
I remember being on the cabinet call. It was a group telephone call when the news was shared about the fact that Boris had gone into hospital and, of course, then going into intensive care. And the sense of shock was palpable on that call. And I know from having spoken to Boris at the time and afterwards that he was profoundly affected, and it changed his views on some public health questions, including tackling obesity. I do think, again, that Jonathan's points are fair. It was difficult at the time on schools, but I think the challenge on social care is absolutely clear. And Louise Casey has been appointed by the government to look at this. But a lot of the things that we need to do in order to fix social care, expensive as some of them may be, I think we already know.
Yes, the one thing I was thinking this weekend, because I had COVID, excuse me, there you go. I had COVID last week and over the weekend. Obviously, it's much less virulent than it was a few years ago.
But it's definitely affected you.
I was ill. I couldn't work here Monday or Tuesday. I couldn't come in. But I found myself cursing the Chinese lab technicians who allowed the virus to escape. And then it occurred to me that we've never really got to the bottom of it, have we?
No. And the inquiry's remit doesn't extend to this. I think that's a mistake. At the beginning, there was a degree of skepticism about the lab leak theory. It's now the view of most,
isn't it?
Exactly. It's the view of most intelligence agencies. And it raises other questions about our relationship with China, which I know you've discussed in recent days. But without knowing what the scientists call the etiology of the virus, its origin, then that means that it is difficult to draw all of the conclusions that we'd like.
Yes. Talking of enemies of this country, what's Russia playing at in the North Sea with this ship, which has been shooting laser beams at British pilots who are shadowing it? What's Putin's game?
Well, I mean, it is actually hugely serious. And look, we think this ship is trying to map all these undersea cables. I mean, and
we know it's got the technology to cover.
Yeah, and the reason why the world is so connected, the reason why we can sort of, send our tweets and we can see what's happening, in all parts of the world, is because the way in which the World Wide Web is connected through all these undersea cables, and so much of our way of life now depends on this. And we think Russia is mapping these cables in order, potentially, to sabotage them and put us on the back foot.
Can be phenomenal. I mean, look at the impact on British trade caused by the cyber attack on Jaguar Land Rover.
Absolutely, flattened the growth.
I mean, it's had a major effect on our economy. So these are actually quite soft targets, aren't they?
Yes, I mean, Russia is ultimately a mafia state, and this is a sign of menace on the part of Russia. Obviously, we know that there are attempts by President Trump to try to bring peace. The Russians will want to show around the time of any negotiations that they remain ready to strike back against us, against the West. And it is the case that the Russians have identified Britain because of the bravery, actually, of successive prime ministers in supporting Ukraine. They've identified us as enemy number 2 behind Ukraine.
And how perturbed should we be by yesterday's reports, it was all over the media yesterday, that if there were to be a concerted aerial attack on this country, we wouldn't have a clue?
I mean, we have to take this seriously. I mean, we really do. I mean, we've all grown up, and I mean, I know a lot of us grew up in the Cold War, but I mean, this feels different, really.
Yeah.
I mean, the threat feels so much more imminent. And just to sort of bring it back to the
And
discussion we
why
had.
are we so exposed now? Because we're not the similar age, Jonathan. I remember living with the fear of the nuclear threat. You know, there was a real fear of that, and it was Russia, US, UK. And why is this a different threat for our youngsters?
Previously, we all thought we could completely rely on the United States to protect us. And that dynamic has changed. And that's partly why, to come back to the discussion we had a little bit earlier about Rachel Reeves and the predicament she finds herself in, she's had to increase defence expenditure because President Trump has said to Europe, you guys have got to start spending more on defence. I'm not going to carry on being there as your big brother protector.
He's not going to ride in.
So we're going to have to pay more for our defence. And it's also right, there's a legitimate debate about this, I get that. But in theory, at least, we're trying to wean ourselves off the fossil fuels, which means we're very dependent on these spikes in energy prices, which, again, jump around depending on how Russia behaves on the world stage.
And isn't there another aspect to this? You talk about mutually assured destruction. That was a sort of guarantee that nuclear war couldn't happen, because if it did, we'd all go down the tubes. This is different.
Completely. There's a new movie, A House Made of Dynamite, about
A
House Made of Dynamite, which is about the threat of nuclear war. I know that the Defense Secretary has watched it. He shared that with a friend at the Cenotaph. And what's terrifying about that film is, A, the Americans come under nuclear attack, but they don't know whether it's the Russians, the Chinese, or the North Koreans, and nuclear proliferation, more countries acquiring nuclear technology is a feature of our times. The second thing is, it brings home the fact that actually the decision, if you come under attack, that any president has or any prime minister has, is simply the most terrifying decision that any leader can have.
really are no. The big one from Ariel. Always keep away from children.
That was a great celebration. Dad would have loved it. He hated how expensive traditional funerals are, so he got a pure cremation funeral plan. It gave him peace of mind, knowing we wouldn't have to arrange or pay for anything. It was a proper, dignified cremation. They were so respectful. And we used some of the money he saved to remember him our way. Thanks, Dad.
For your free quote, call us free or visit our website today. Take out a plan and you'll get a free £50 gift card too.
Sugar Town. Gemini, which of these would be a little less expected?
Check out the alliums. They'd go great with the hydrangeas below.
Will those last till Saturday?
Yes, they should last until Saturday.
Google Pixel 10.
Roll up, one and all. Ready yourself for an entrancing delight. A mouth-marvelingly taste-tacular, wonderful sight. Uncannily, suckerbly, soothingly sumptuous, mysteriously, mentally, tongue-twirlingly scrumptious.
I see great flavor in your future.
Marvel in the menthol with Jakeman's of Boston since 1907.
Routine, adjective. Used to describe an individual whose spirit is unyielding, unconstrained. One who navigates life on their own terms, effortlessly. An individual confident in their contradictions. Routine, the new fragrance by Miu Miu. Defined by you.
Maybe I should do something about this.
Are you kidding me? You have to.
New Excellence Nudes by L'Oréal Paris. Our ammonia-free formula now enriched with microkeratin. Get up to 50% less breakage and 100% grey coverage. Colour designed to flatter your complexion. New Excellence Nudes by L'Oréal Paris.
Because you're worth it.
Unmissable this month on ITV.
I take risks.
Lana!
That's my job.
What is that?
Potpourri.
Handle of pressure. Here and I'm a celebrity.
Trigger point, changing ends, and I'm a celebrity. Get me out of here. Stream free on ITVX.
down the central spine of the UK, but for coastal areas, there will be more showers streaming southwards in that Arctic air, and as I say, some of them falling as snow. Temperatures 4 or 5 degrees Celsius, but once you factor in the wind chill, it will be feeling more like -1 or -2. So wrap up warm. That's your weather. It is time to take a very short break, but don't go ahead. There's still plenty more to come on ITV. You're watching Good Morning Britain. We'll see you back here in a couple of minutes.
Mind if I?
Win a share of £1 million with Tombola's new Jungle Free game. Play for free.
Often, children will do what they see, so it's important to set the tone and start good daily habits together. Halib Orange vitamins have been helping kids shine for nearly 90 years, and we have a range for adults too, filled with essential nutrients so you can lead by example. Set up your family's defenses and provide immune support, keeping on top of your family's health and well-being from one day to the next. Start a healthy habit together with Halib Orange vitamins. One for you and one for me.
That was a great celebration. Dad would have loved it. He hated how expensive traditional funerals are, so he got a pure cremation funeral.
Looks good. I feel absolutely brilliant. I use Planta 39 leave-in caffeine formula on the days I don't wash my hair. I just apply the leave-in formula directly on my scalp and massage it in. Leave it on and style as normal. Done. With Planta 39, I can really feel the effect. Planta 39 leave-in formula. Try it for your menopause journey.
Like a moth to a flame.
Black Opium Eau de Parfum Over Red, Yves Saint Laurent.
Welcome to the 1% Club rollover. It's the 1% Club with a twist. 5 nights, 5 shows, and somebody could walk away with up to £500,000. This is big, right? Yeah. Join us for a week of the 1% Club like you've never seen it before.
All new, the 1% Club rollover. Coming soon on ITV1 and ITVX.
7:42. Amy Tapper here. Tried really hard to lose weight for getting on for 12 years before she started weight loss injections. But after she spoke openly about her journey and how successful it was, she said the online abuse that she got has just kind of gone off the scale.
The former Gogglebut star says despite having a newfound confidence after losing nearly 8 stone, and she talked about it so brilliant on this programme, so many of you got in touch. The trolling does still affect her. Amy shared some of the comments she's received with us. One wrote all this praise just for injecting yourself, while another said, I'll never be sympathetic for fat people who cannot be bothered to put the fork down and go to the gym.
Another user wrote, been on jabs, love, don't flex it. And another one, fat people will make any excuse not to eat healthy and exercise. And Amy's, what is wrong with people? Do they think that they'll die any happier?
You'd think so, right?
Like that, you know?
You would think so. It's crazy. It's crazy. I think you're doomed if you do, and you're doomed if you don't. So you might as well just do.
How does it affect you? I mean, I think all trolling comes generally from something that's wrong in the life of the troller, isn't it? They're attacking because they're in pain, they're in anguish, they're jealous, whatever, and it's always about them.
Yeah.
It's not about the person that's being attacked. But that doesn't mean to say that harm isn't done.
100%. Look, I do think of myself as very strong-minded. I think whatever they say to me, I can say a lot worse about myself. But of course it affects you. You know, no one's, superhuman, and I can be strong and I can be confident. But when I've put all this work in, look, I do just kind of have to laugh at it. And I just think to myself, well, if they think that I'm bad now, then they would have loved me 8 stone heavier. Do you know what I mean?
So,
seems to be
when
changing.
you went, sorry.
No, carry on.
When you were in last time, a lot of people got in touch with us afterwards because you summed up something that people who perhaps haven't